the screwed up sound and some of the video being slow. I'm working with a very old computer. It doesn't even have a DVD or a CD recorder. It only reads straight CDs, so bear with me. It is a brand new camera that I was given. Unfortunately, it doesn't fit with my Windows. It's for Windows Vista and 7, and I have Windows XP, so I'm sorry for the inconvenience with that. But without further ado, on this blue crystal eagle day, I'd like to go ahead and get right into the subject of zero-point energy. Previously, we were talking about, just to recap, how consciousness is a whole unified field that each of us are a vector point, and we are accessing the whole of what we are, being consciousness, depending on our level of awareness. So everything that exists is consciousness and is part of consciousness, and we are each radiating our own experiences within consciousness based on the level of awareness that we have of self. In other words, the more that you consider to be yourself, one with you, the more you will be able to understand and harmonize, and the broader range of reality you will be able to manifest. The more harmonic the reality you will be able to manifest. But we're going to go ahead and get right into the topic of chemtrails and HAARP. I had started to get into this on the last video. What chemtrails and HAARP is, it's not just weather modification. Weather modification may have been what they began researching this as, but it goes way beyond that. Because the nature of our reality is the electromagnetic spectrum, as well as the zero-point field to which the electromagnetic spectrum emanates, things such as HAARP and chemtrails do affect our reality on many levels. So HAARP is basically, it's an antenna array. They have one in Alaska. They have many across the earth, actually. There's not just the one in Alaska. And it's DARPA that heads that out. Defense Agency's Advanced Research. I'm not exactly sure what the acronym means. It's DARPA. It's stupid government, military, all that. They basically are researching the electronic methods of mind control and weather manipulation. You know, it can cause earthquakes, all these types of things. Many people are very familiar with HAARP, so I'm not going to go into the basic stuff about HAARP so much as the in-depth detailed stuff and the stuff that a lot of people have not yet realized about HAARP and chemtrails, which work hand in hand. I will explain a little bit more what chemtrails are. I'm sure everybody has seen the planes in the sky that are spraying these what look like white clouds that are persistent. It's not a contrail. A contrail is frozen water vapors, and it only lasts like 30 seconds. It's a small trail behind the plane before it starts disappearing. Now, they are using a new type of chemtrail substance, which does become clear slightly. You can still see it, though, so it's not the same thing at all as a contrail. Now, what these chemtrails are is tiny metal particles that are propelled out of the back of these airplanes at 4,000 degrees Kelvin. What happens when they aluminum, you know, and other metals? What it does is it turns them into ions.
It's a particle that has its valence electrons or outer shell electrons, or it could be further in depending on the level of ionization. It has them removed, bumped off. And so what you end up with is you end up with a dynamic spray of atoms that are ready to bond. They want to bond with water. They're very active, and they're actually sending out and receiving information. It's like a ping system, and this is on a nanoscale. So with this ping system of nano computers is really what it is, or smart dust. It's also referred to as smart dust. What this is
or what they're using this for, is basically they're pulsing out certain frequencies from HAARP, which are affecting many levels of consciousness, and because of these nano amplifiers or computers, which are sending and receiving this information, they're picking up that HAARP frequency, and they're then amplifying that out. And now the chemtrails, the ionic particles, they do get in the human system. They get into plants, and they're everywhere in everything, and they do cross the blood-brain barrier. And there's evidence of this. I mean, it's a scientific fact, but if you want to search for a place where this is stated officially, you can go to the Forbes website
and search an article about gene therapy by the company Ion Torrent. This company, Ion Torrent, the CEO is who they're interviewing, and they explicitly state that ions help to read minds. Actually, if you could get it, what he says is, if you could get an ion in between brain synapses, then you could read minds. He doesn't actually say that it passes the blood-brain barrier. This is actually, upon further research into it, you can find that. My bad. What he does say is, though, that these ions can read minds. So, which is actually a more important issue. And so what that is telling us is that, okay, so we have this HAARP system, and we have these nanocomputers which are spread out everywhere. So it's basically creating a four-dimensional hologram of everything that exists, because these ions are not, they're not picky as to what they amplify and send out. Whatever comes in, they amplify it and send it out. So with the right tools to receive that information, with the right computer system, which they have, if you look into Montauk Project and these types of things, you'll notice that they do have a computer system which can take all this data in and actually form a holographic model of whatever it is that they're focusing on. So, for example, and I've personally witnessed this in the Woodlands area where I live, right next to the Anadarko building, which I have been told by an ex-sheriff who does happen to be a 33rd degree Mason, that the Anadarko oil company corporation building that is close to me is a CIA front building. And so what I was saying about that is, very close to that building, on the same street that it is on, at 4 a.m., my family had left the house on a trip to go to New Orleans for Mardi Gras. Well, I look up and I see this huge triangular ship. It was triangular like this with a small triangle on the back. It was a craft. I cannot call it an airplane. It was not a plane. It was silent. It was hovering, almost still, going slower than our vehicle was going. And it was close enough to where I could see the white letters on the bottom that were written over gray patches. And the plane was done in military camo. And it was hovering very slowly and silently. It looked very much like the TR-3B, if I'm not mistaken on the name of that. But what I do feel that they're doing with these planes is that they are taking what they can call multi-physics scans of the area. And what a multi-physics scan is, a fancy and kind of covert term for basically multidimensional. They're seeing, they're seeing you in visible light, they're seeing you in infrared, they're seeing you in microwave frequency, they're seeing you, they're seeing all of the radiance that is being emitted in the area in order to get basically an auric reading of what's going on. I do believe that these multi-physics receptors or readers, scanners, whatever you want to call them, are also picking up on 0-point energy. So they are able to read the aura, similar to a Kirlian camera, only video style. So, and again, frequency, since we've already talked about the fact that everything that exists is frequency, this includes your emotions, diseases, everything that exists is a frequency. And diseases and such are disharmonic frequencies. It's like they're not resonating together properly, so they're creating these basically consumptive points within the system where energy is not freely flowing properly.
So what they can do with this HAARP, and even with other directed energy weapons to target specific individuals, they can take the frequency of anything and basically, like, you know, from flu to feeling hot, or anger, or cancer, or heart attacks, or, you know, anything you can think of, any kind of emotion, any thought, any stream of words. They can actually vector that energy to your area, to wherever you are, and it will affect you in that way. You will feel angry, or you will feel itchy, or you will feel whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. Anything that has a frequency, which is everything, they can then vector your way and it will affect you. Now, there are ways to shield this, but when getting into the idea of shielding, what you're doing when you're shielding is you're creating a pocket of separation. And there is the aspect of letting positive light through, only positive light through, yes. But I tend to
prefer not to create any sort of separation between me and anything else, because unconditional love is about, and that's what 0 point energy is, unconditional love is about acceptance, and through that acceptance we can actually weave an understanding. We can comprehend that which is around us and being sent to us. So anytime these low or negative frequencies are being sent to me, for example, what I do is I absorb all the energies around me, then I connect with my 0 point. It is the still space within where you cease thoughts and you just allow yourself to be in the moment and feel the peacefulness and the quietness of that moment. And with that connection, I can then take any frequency that is in my sphere, which I consider to be infinite, and I can then harmonize that into a comprehensive understanding. That way I'm not resisting anything, because what you resist will persist until you're ready to accept it. It's a form of denial, because in truth we are everything. So for me to resist a microwave frequency being beamed at me is to say that that is not me and I don't want that. And because of that resistance, it's only going to create more and more conflict, more turmoil, more force, more polarity. And what we're trying to do is unify the polarity. Polarity is a gift. It is a gift to give us, to enable us to see the infinite possibilities. You know, it's like you expand, you have that polarity in order to expand your eve. Take that expansion and you loop it back together and it creates a holistic view. And with that holistic view, you can then, instead of going in your circle and repeating the same thing over and over again, because you see the whole thing now, you can begin to create your spiral of refined expansion, which is the goal. Refined expansion of consciousness. So, again, to get back to HAARP and chemtrails, people want to say, you know, is this a positive thing or is this a negative thing? That's a question in duality, and the truth of the matter is it's both. It is, of course, the negative aspects are what has been explained by many researchers. You know, yes, it can cause these diseases. Yes, it can make these feelings come in and such and so forth. And if we are in a state of separation, yes, we will experience it as things being imposed upon us. But if we're in a state of unity and realize that consciousness is an infinite field and we are at one with that field, and take my sphere that I consider myself to be and expand that infinitely, then like I was saying before, we can then take in whatever energy is around us, because we know it is ourself, and we can weave it into that into understanding, so that it's not harmful to us, but actually fortifies us. You know, it's like the more energy you incorporate, the less anything can harm you. We're basically coming out of our cocoon. And in order to come out of our cocoon, we have to be able to handle all of the incoming cosmic energies. So how can, specifically, how can HAARP and how can chemtrails benefit us? Okay, remember how I was explaining that these metal ions that they are dispersing through the air that we're breathing in and everything, it's actually creating a plasma. Plasma is ionic material.
and depending on the density of it, it can be like a gelatinous feeling. I mean, if you look at some of the clouds in the sky when they have been chemtrailing, you can see it's not the normal consistency of a cloud as it used to be when we were kids. They really started heavy on spraying this in 2000. And I remember around 2002, I began to get severe sinus infections like several a year. Whereas before I hadn't had that. So that was my body acclimating to these chemtrails that they're putting out. And now I don't get any sinus infections really. But so how can this help us? So we know that these things, these ions, this plasma, is already in our system. It's in our brains. It's everywhere. It's in everything. If you take, for example, in order to prove this, if you take a flash, if you take that sky, make sure the flash is on.
Particles, and you can tell it's not water because it's falling at a heavy rate. You can tell it's like a heavy particle in comparison to, say, like a mist of water. And then, of course, you can look on your camera. People are seeing these tiny little orbs everywhere in their picture. I see these orbs, see these orbs. What that is the light catching the chemtrails and reflecting it back at the camera. And I know this is going to disappoint a lot of people because they're saying, oh, these were spirits, these are spirits. Well, the answer is never A or B. The answer is always A and B. There's never a separation. So the truth of the matter is that each of these chemtrails is a consciousness of itself. Now, if you've watched the documentary Thrive, or if you've listened to Nassim Haramein, then you'll know about the torus shape of consciousness. Or if you're connected to your point and understood it already, like many people are now channeling from within themselves, straight from source, then you will understand easily that these particles are also this toroidal shape of consciousness. Just like the shape of electromagnetic energy that's around the Earth, that's around the Sun. You know, it's the same shape of individuated consciousness that's repeated throughout. Everything has this shape. That's why the apple is considered a sacred fruit, because it has that toroidal shape. And in the inside, you can see the 5 seeds, which give the shape of the flower of life, which is the beginning of that toroidal shape. So these individual ions, which are creating this plasma, are as well that toroidal shape. And because of that, it's an individuated form of consciousness. Like I said, everything is consciousness. There is nothing that is not consciousness. So these little particles showing up in your pictures are both reflections of the chemtrails, and yet everything is energy, everything is consciousness. So these tiny particles are also consciousness. The chemtrails are harnessing consciousness, and they are resonating consciousness. That's what everything is. So neither is right or wrong. They're both correct when combined together. Now, how can these little consciousness resonators help us? Again, back to that main point that I've been trying to get at. Because they're in our brain and they're all around us, they can actually, as long as you are not in fear or in separation from them, they can actually help to amplify your special extra-human abilities, such as telekinesis, telepathy. Basically just helps you to radiate your aura in a more amplified way. It is a nano version of a zero-point energy modulator. And I have a handheld version right here. Let me get it. Okay. This was given to me by Kasol Uch, he is an MK Ultra survivor, but he is still being used, unfortunately. So he tends to, he's a sweet guy, and I bless him and love him with all my heart. But they are using him, and by they, I mean the powers that be,
you know, the Illuminati, they are using him as one of their controlled minions. So he does move back and forth from, you know, helping the light workers and then being programmed to cause havoc for the light workers. Now, he did give me this device against his handler's wishes, and also taught me how to make them. I have a cube one that I made, but I'm letting my friend borrow that one right now. Otherwise, I'd show you. There are pictures on my Facebook of the cube version that I made with the inside as well, so you can see what's inside. It's a crystal resonator, and crystals being frozen light are perfect for this type of thing. It creates the toroidal shape around it, therefore making it its own individuated consciousness, which you connect with, and it's amplifying your aura, because all is one. Okay, and when you can actually feel the energy, you mentally activate it, or telepathically, however you would like to refer to it as.
Activate the device, and it does amplify your aura and gives extremely amazing experiences. So, to call the chemtrails bad or good is only half the story. So they're both, really. And when you realize that it has good to it, you can dissolve the negative aspects. It's all a matter of what do you accept as self. If you accept something as self, if you can validate it, then you can overcome whatever challenges that truth holds with it. Because, again, to those much is given, much is expected. So if you want to gain these abilities of telekinesis and telepathy and all these types of things, if you want to embody your soul, then we have to stop referring to things as demonic and negative and, you know, bad, and start realizing that it's there as a challenge so that we may refine and expand our own level of being, so that we can take our structure and strengthen it. You know, in old medicinal, like allopathy, I believe, for example, they would say there was a plant that had slight poisonous notes to it, and maybe you needed to purge something from your system. They would use a small amount of that, and it would get your body in the mode to purge, and it would actually help you. So all things in moderation, all things in balance. You know, it goes back to the point. I mean, and nature is a great example of God's consciousness, which is our consciousness. Consciousness is one unified thing. It's the level of awareness where we gain the variability. Consciousness is one unified thing, and it's your level of awareness that allows for variability. And, you know, even if we all connect to 0 point, it still allows for diversity, because we each have our own way of expressing that truth. Our own creative way. So, the best thing to do is when you see these planes above, when you see them spraying, is not to be angry, not to send negative energy, because that's actually exactly what they want you to do. What that will do is just take that negative energy, amplify it, and send it out, and it will cause more chaos and more chaos. Which, again, I mean, if there is more chaos, that just means there's more for us to unify. I mean, so ultimately there's never a true negative to anything. It's always a challenge for us to achieve, and it always makes us stronger and better. But on that note, we do want to, I'm sure everybody out there is like, wow, this life has been extremely challenging. I know my truth now. I'm ready to live in my truth. I'm ready to have a fertile environment from which to radiate this truth of unconditional love. And so that is why, you know, we are moving from this process of extreme polarity into a state of unity, because we're ready for it. We really are. We've experienced so many things. Each person has experienced infinity. And so it's time to then take everything, that entire view of infinity, and unify it together so that we can take the next grandest step in consciousness. So,
when we see these chemtrails in the sky, just go ahead and put a smile on your face and send your love up and bless the plane, bless that pilot in the plane. Just send your love, and you'll actually notice that you'll be able to dissolve the chemtrails. I know a lot of you have probably seen the Men Who Stare at Goats, the cloud bursting. Well, exactly. This is exactly what's going on, and I tend to prefer not to call it cloud bursting because there's a connotation of separation with that. It's just a process of unification, as far as to define it. I look at the chemtrail and I unify it with harmonic love, and it spreads out its energy in a positive way. And you will notice that your abilities will increase when you do these types of things. And knowing that you can use the chemtrails in this way is going to make it even more, it's going to strengthen it. Because again, everything is consciousness. So something that you were not aware of before, but you were still affecting, is going to be a little less effective, or actually a lot less effective, than when you finally know about it and you're doing it consciously. It's the difference between, a flashlight and a laser. Before you were in the dark, with a tiny flashlight, but now you have, a huge laser, which is vectoring everything into your consciousness to understand. So, and the truth of the matter is, I know a lot of people, especially a lot of MK survivors, who have been used as super soldiers and very into physical action. Physical action is great and it is necessary, but physical action can be thwarted if there is not that divine inner unconditional love being pulsed
out in order to make action synchronistic, in order to make it mean something and actually go somewhere. I mean, how many times in life have we done something and it hasn't amounted to anything? It could have been the attitude, the feelings behind what we were doing. If day after day we're doing something and we want it to amount to something, but inside we are feeling negative about it and, just grouchy about it, then chances are you're just going to be spinning your wheels, which is what humanity has been doing for centuries. So we're getting to the point now where we realize action will not do unless it is connected to source, and source is unconditional love. Light is everything that exists. Light is what is. We look out and we want to into space and we see a big vast darkness. Why is that? That is because we're only allowed to see a small portion of the electromagnetic field. We see what's called visible light. But there's all this higher energy, such as UVA, UVB, and above, that we're unable to see. And it's brighter than the visible light spectrum. And it includes more color and more brilliance. So really, this dark energy that they're calling it in science, it's not dark at all. It's just too bright for you to see. Just like there are sounds that are too loud for your gut, like the dog whistle and such. Well, there's also light that's too bright yet for us to see. But when you start connecting with your inner 0 point, that place within you where thought is quieted, where peace is formed, get an overwhelming feeling of joy and comfort, that place, when you start to tap into that, you will then be able to see the higher light. And it's a very brilliant, it's brilliant colors, and it's at the level, I mean, there's many different levels of seeing it, of course. But at source, it's not form. It's not about form and lines. It's a misty, swirling color of energy. Anytime you start to see actual shapes and forms, you know that you're in one of the levels of dimensions, and not, you're seeing levels of dimensions and not the 0 point. The 0 point is going to be just formless color, pretty much, formless light. And there's nothing wrong with the levels. It's all unified. I mean, we do want to visualize actual things in our life, but it's connecting to that 0 point.
that will help us to manifest the things in the most harmonic way for us, and which may not be the fastest way per se. I mean, it's not your consciousness is not concerned with speed per se, because time is an illusion anyway. Time is an illusion. It's just basically, you could say time is spin, or you could say time is the frequency of awareness. So things that would feel like past would be like lower frequency things, and things that are future would be like higher frequency things in the process. So it's basically a process of moving from low frequency to high frequency. But you will find that in our history, we actually were living in a higher frequency consciousness. So again, this past and future thing starts to get very intertwined, and you realize it's all happening now. And it's, so it's subjective, depending on how you want to look at it. So again, I think we need to use our environment, which is our self. We're the ones who are radiating this. There's nothing solid. You are a vortex of consciousness, and you are modulating energy. You are sending it and receiving it. You are moving it about in a harmonic or disharmonic way. And you are doing this by radiance and consumption. Now, there's no way to, it's not about doing one or the other. What it is finding that harmonic balance. Because if you try to radiate without consuming your reality, and this is not necessarily referring to food per se, then you will be in separation of that reality. It's like going about your life with blinders on, I believe this, I believe this, I believe this, and I don't care what my reality is saying. But then again, you also do not want to be strictly consumptive. And that is what the main force that we have been seeing and experiencing on this earth has been. It's been consumption. Everywhere you look, it's consume, consume, consume. And it's not about radiating your truth. At least that was what it was. And now we're moving it into the point where consumption is being shown for what it really is. Completely, let's see, what's the word I'm looking for? Completely draining. It's completely draining for you just to constantly consume and consume, because you'll never fill that void. Because the truth of the matter is, you have to recognize the 0 point infinite energy within. It's always been there. If you don't acknowledge that 0 point energy, that divine consciousness, that is you, that is all, then you feel the hollow void. And that's basically the simple difference between people who are in the sort of Illuminati category or New World Order category, and the real enlightened or light worker category, is that the Illuminati, they see the vortex, they understand the vortex, they think they've mastered the spin cycle of everything, but yet they've missed the big point, the 0 point. And even when they have found out what they consider 0 point to be, they don't want to acknowledge it as consciousness. It's a tool that they can use to manipulate and whatnot. So it's not they don't unify it as part of self, and so thus they do not get the full power of it. But when you realize that you are not just the vortex of experience, but you are the infinite energy within that connects to everything, that is when you move beyond the mind plane and start really getting into whole self-processing. It's not just about thinking thoughts. When you're thinking in linear thoughts, you can only do so much at once, which is why even this is limiting. But when you begin to connect to that 0 point, you can wake up with infinite knowledge. Anything that is posed to you, you can then harmonize. Just like that. As it comes to you, you harmonize it. No problem. There's No confusion, no anger, no frustration. It's all there. As long as you are willing to look at it from the unconditional love observer standpoint. And there is to speak on this observer, this 0 point observer, there is a hypnotist named Dolores. I'm not sure what her last name is, but she's on the Project Camelot videos, and I would recommend everyone watch her videos. She can hypnotize people and get them to that 0 point, which she calls the observer state. And she does admit that at that point, no matter who she's talking to, when she gets them to that state of observer hypnosis, that being, that consciousness, that person knows everything. It literally knows everything. There's no limitation to what it knows. But it will reveal what is necessary to be revealed. If someone is not ready to handle it, and the truth is, it's your own perspective of limitation that you put on yourself. So really, no matter where you are, you're always ready to handle anything that comes your way. But if you put limitations on your own self, then that's going to, limit your ability to handle it without, just going crazy. And sometimes it takes going crazy to finally unify. I mean, I don't know how many indigos or light workers out there had a cushy childhood. I don't think many of them did. I think most of them probably chose very difficult childhoods so that they could see the world for what it is, and they also could use that unconditional love in their heart that they were born with to truly understand why these things were happening. Because it's real easy to say, oh, that person's bad. But it takes a true level of unconditional love to really look at that person and say, what happened that made this person feel like they had no choice but to take this action? And it's when we start delving into those deep questions about ourselves and about those we love that we really find out that there is no evil. And I know that that's really hard for a lot of people to understand. You start finding out when you dig into this, when you dig deep, that this is an autonomous system. It's a system of just continual abuse that has been going on and on and on and on within our consciousness, such that there is no individual person that is at the top making this happen. If you could find one, if you have that one person that you think is making this happen, you'll find out that that one person had a parent or an individual or several individuals in their lives that were inflicting some form of external mind control and torture upon them. Now, why would consciousness have this exist? Why would this happen? And the answer to that is actually the most beautiful realization. And that is that the one consciousness that is all, which you can refer to as God, the isness, it's not really so much the name as it is the understanding behind it. But that one consciousness that is all had to create a chain reaction in order to take its unified self and fractalize it into infinite individuations. So, in a sense, actually, in a very real sense, a very real mirror of that ultimate truth is the creation of the MK Ultra survivor. They go through torture, and the reason why they are put through this torture is to fractalize the mind so that they can have these different alters which can then be honed in to certain specializations. And they have an amnesiac barrier around each altar. So just like many humans today don't realize that they are at one with everything else. They're at one with each other person. They have an amnesiac barrier. They're creating a shield around themselves. So to relate this back to the torus, the toroid, that we all are in consciousness, that is your own little individuated cocoon. And really, you're many layers of that. So what connecting to the 0 point does is make you realize that you're not just these little encased bubbles, the Russian encased dolls, for example, but that you are the whole thing. And those are just the many layers of you that are ever more harmonic, and give us our beautiful rainbow immanence. And I'm glad I brought up the term rainbow because, and I'm personally going to relate to the Bible only because it's what I grew up with. I see the truth in all religions, and I also see distortions in all religions, and I'll get into why that exists. But the rainbow is the symbol of God's promise for a specific reason. It is because it takes all of the colors of the rainbow, all of the perspectives, all of the levels of awareness and consciousness combined, woven together in order, in a higher order in organization, just as the red light moving all the way to the violet light is. It takes all of those woven together harmonically to create the full white light of truth. So when we're out in our reality and we hear something that doesn't necessarily resonate with us, if we block that, if we resist that, we are actually denying a portion of the rainbow, and it will affect our truth. We will not be getting the whole white light of truth, but instead we'll be getting an off-white. So the secret is to take everything that comes to us in our consciousness, and instead of to seek to invalidate it, we must seek to organize it. And the way to do this is to ask yourself, when someone, let's say someone, tells you some truth, something that they consider to be their truth. What you do is you look at each word used and you ask yourself, what frequency of unconditional love does this sentence have? Is this sentence more based in fear or unconditional love? There's only two. There's only two expressions, two energies that anything could ever be. And it's of course a variant of that. So you can either be in unconditional love, which is unity, or you can be in fear, which is separation. So every word is going to have a frequency of unity in it, unity or separation, some sort of stream of that. So you can take a sentence, for example, and see how many words in that sentence. And now you don't have to count them. This is something that it becomes natural. And you can read what someone said and say, okay, well, I can see that that person does have a large amount of unity in their understanding, but there are these areas of separation. They're using the words, such as other, for example. And now, if they make note, a lot of times when I use the word other, I put it in quotes because it's only other in relation to the context of the sentence, So you can use the frequency of words or of experience until, or feelings. Is this feeling a feeling of fear, or is this a feeling of unconditional love? Always the unconditional love is going to be the true message from God. It doesn't matter. I mean, logic is going to want to just tear that up. Logic is going to say, there's no way, you have to plan for the worst, and yada, 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 But the truth is, the light is always the highest truth, or unconditional love is always the highest truth, which is light. Light and unconditional love. They are, again, degrees of each other. So what you want to do is, whatever comes into your reality, is use that little test question. How much of this is in unconditional love and unity? How much of this is in fear? And by that, you can start to organize the truths that are being given to you, and you'll start to see this layered story. So instead of just hearing something like, YahVeh and Lucifer and the whole story between them two, you'll actually begin to get a whole picture of it's like we're all individuations of that. It began with the one consciousness, and the one consciousness, in order to create individuations, had to separate itself using a form of self-degrading almost. It had to self-harm in order to fractalize and create that amnesia, so that we could have the individuations, which can then interact, creating all these random, infinite possibilities. And then through that, we begin to notice a pattern forming, synchronicities forming in our reality, and start to say, hey, wait, there's unity here. I see patterns. I see synchronicity. There's something divine going on here. There's some force that is moving us to a certain place. So you have this process now, of the one consciousness creating alpha and omega, the two stretching the spectrum of alpha and omega. And then when you see that whole spectrum, oh my gosh, look, you can combine it and create the Ouroboros, the the snake that's eating its tail. That's the process, the cycle of life we've been going through. So you can create that Ouroboros and then step back from it, see the whole thing. And this is getting into the Trinity now, because you had your spectrum with the two opposites. You've combined them, and now you're looking from above, the third perspective, and you can actually begin to move beyond that cyclical cycle and spiral up, like I had said earlier, spiral up into a more refined expansion through that. So we don't need to invalidate people. We don't need to fight. We don't need to be in fear. You don't have to say, oh, that's disinformation. That person's evil. They're for the NWO. They're disinfo. Because the truth of the matter is, the whole argument of info and disinfo is, again, it's a duality trap. Really, everything is information. Even when you get somebody who's telling you, quote unquote, disinfo, if you know how to read the frequency of that person's words, you can actually tell at exactly which level of truth they're at. So disinfo, in a way, it gives you a more whole perspective of exactly where that person is in their process of unity. Because it is an inevitable truth that we will all unify. It's a scientifically provable, inevitable truth. And that is what we're going to be discussing in our part 3 of this video. That inevitable truth of 0 point. And it has to do with the Fibinocci Spiral. It has to do with the timeline collapse. I'm sure a lot of you out there will have watched the Project Camelot video with Bill Brockbrader, or Bill Wood, the Navy SEAL, who saw the looking glass, and he saw the convergence point, the inevitable convergence point, might I add. So we're going to start talking about that next video, and exactly what that means, and how the collapsing of timelines works, and why. So I know this video was a little sporadic, and I had a couple interruptions. I was trying to do this before my son woke up, but there was a lot of stuff going on which didn't enable me to do it in that timely manner. And then my husband got home, so I'm sorry if I seemed a little distracted at certain points in the video. But I hope I got everything across well. And if you have any questions, please ask them. I love questions. There's nothing that I won't do my best to answer. There's nothing that I won't tap into 0 point and bring down and harness. So feel free to challenge me. And I ask that you just please do it with unconditional love in your heart, and understand that there are things out there that are so grand, and I'm not going to say so grand that we can't comprehend them, because that's a limitation. They're actually so grand that we can comprehend infinitely, and that's the best part about it. So I love you guys from the infinite expanses of my heart, and I am very glad to be doing this. I get so much love and joy by helping to spread my truth so that it can help awaken the truth in others, their truth in others. Because we all have a piece to the puzzle to bring forth. We really do. And it doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter what hat you wear, black or white, doesn't matter. Because we're all one, we're all family, and we're all here to be the support system necessary for us to move to the next level. So, I love you guys. I hope you have a great evening, or whatever time it is where you are. This is going to be exciting, and check with your heart, because there you'll know that a wonderful orgasmic jubilee is right around the corner. I mean, right around the corner. it is. Oh, and everybody, one last thing. If you don't already know, do some research into the super wave that the galaxy has pulsed out. NASA did release information about it. They called it a gamma and X-ray bubble. But if you do your research, actually Paula Violette, the astrophysicist that they had announced this, has done a video on Project Camelot. It's a 2+ hour video describing the super wave and stuff like that. And I also have a blog which goes into a lot of detail on explaining this on my live journal blog. It's ChristyNiNe.livejournal.com. That's ChristyNiNe.livejournal.com. And there you can find my article on this super wave coming in, which is good because we're all energy. So what this is going to give us a quantum boost, and it actually already is. It's already been affecting us. And again, this all goes into video 3 that I'm going to do with the collapsing timelines and the Fibonacci and all that. It's going to be awesome. So do some research into that. And if you haven't watched the Project Camelot Bill Brockbrader, that would be awesome supplemental study work to do to get ready for the next discussion that we're going to be having. Hopefully, maybe someday soon, I might start doing, conference calls or some sort of round table. I was really wanting to do a round table with a bunch of the MK survivors, MK triumphants, I like to call them, because really, I mean, it's those that have been in the greatest polarity that are going to be able to really bring about the greatest unity. It's like a rubber band, you stretch it. The farther you stretch it, when it's time to let go, pew, the higher it's going to zoom. And that's exactly what's happening. So I love you guys. You want to come say bye? Say bye, Jovi.
Bye.
I love you.
I love you.
Blow kisses. Get close. Blow kisses.